Kendra Greene here reading. I wanted to tell you guys about our next events this semester. First up, we are extremely excited to have alum Carrie Blankenship-Kramer, who is now an agent, a literary agent, as well as a young adult book author. So alum, agent, author, Carrie Blankenship-Kramer will be here October 2nd, 7:30 in the chapel. CE credit, as always, October 2nd, 7:30 in the chapel. Then the next poet for the Georgia Poetry Circuit, Tim Seibels, is coming October 24th. Notice the time difference. It's going to be at 4 p.m. But CE credit, that's Georgia Poetry Circuit writer Tim Seibels, an amazing poet, very, very well respected. CE credit, October 24th in the chapel at 4. That's all I have. I'd like to introduce Connor Coltrane, our senior creative writing student. Please give Connor a warm welcome.
The world is chock-a-block with untold wonders, there for the taking, ready to be uncovered at any moment, if only we keep our eyes open. This is a quote from one of our illustrious guests' books, the Museum of Wales You'll Never See, concerning various museums around Iceland. I am particularly fond of the one in which I learned that certain animal phalluses contain literal bones.
Most of them.
Most informative. However, her style is very, I think, welcoming for you to explore all of those wonders that you wouldn't normally find on your own. She discusses animals in her latest work, no less strange and wonderful, in imaginary bestiaries, including Ted Cruz's A Swarm of Hornets. But she first got her start at bachelor's in philosophy, briefly studying photography, before getting an MFA in nonfiction in the University of Iowa with our very own Dr. Peters. You shameless self-promoter, you. That's right. And more importantly, she got a very strong start studying and working at museums, especially the Dallas Museum of Art, and studying photography on her own. She illustrates all of her works herself, and she really. Sorry.
You're good, man.
And in addition to her whimsical drawings and renderings made on surprisingly short notice, as I was able to learn earlier, I think in all of her works has a very particular emphasis, as I said, on those myriad wonders you normally wouldn't discover. I never thought that nonfiction was all that interesting, but it wasn't until such illustrious writers as these were able to enlighten me on the real nature of the craft. It's about finding the story that you would not normally have found on your own, as she says on her in that same essay concerning the Museum of Phallological Specimens in Iceland. She gives you the gift of something you could not have imagined on your own. So without further ado, Kendra Greene, everyone. Woo!
I was over here earlier this morning to check out the space, and I was given my option of being over there or being over here. I'm not sure when I'm ever going to get to be in a pulpit again. I'm very excited. I feel like I'm in the crow's nest of a ship. I also feel like there's a sudden looming power disparity between us. If you would like to come closer and close that gap, you are welcome to. There are a few things that I would love to read to you tonight. We'll have some time for questions. If you cannot wait and it needs to happen before it seems like I'm done reading, bring it on. I can't wait. I feel like I should give you one thing. And if I'm only giving you one thing tonight, it's a thing that I've come to realize through writing and through the living. There are facts. There are stories. There are ideas that will, I kid you not, 100% flip you upside down, change your life, never to be the same again. And I don't know what we're doing here besides finding as many of them as we can and sharing them if it's at all possible. So hopefully, that's what we're doing tonight. I'm going to read you some short things, and then maybe some long things, then I'm going to take the temperature to see what you really need in your life is a mysterious sound / smell in the ceiling, if you need a funny-looking dog, possibly just a little bit of sea monsters. So consider where you're at, and I'm going to take you to the beginning of the book, in the beginning of the pandemic. And we'll go from there. The witching hour. One night, the first summer of the pandemic, I was walking this very block. It was equally late, the same witching hour, when I saw a tree coming down the street. It was a young tree, slender and tall, not loping or thudding as you might imagine a tree to lumber, but gliding, just sailing along. Dare I say, a bit jaunty? It seemed so carefree, the night to itself, a little wind in its leaves. I was, in those months, generally unmoored from time, from so many things. I did not exactly think of myself as restless or searching, but certainly I walked a lot, going out again and again, later and later. My boat of hours kept that season by the alarm of grapples at sunset, swarming in an already darkening sky. By the tide of pickup trucks idling in the corner store parking lot, its gravel studded and clinky with bottle caps becoming rust. By the basketball players, shoulder to shoulder, lining the court in the park, the border of their bodies, the way they glowed, skin shining under lights. By the utter stillness outside the hospital. By the chrysalis forms of figures come to sleep on the high side steps of the block white church. At some point that night, the vantage changed. A gap in the wall of cars carved between us. A revelation as the tree drew near. The tree was on a bicycle. The tree was riding in the front basket like a friend perched on the handlebars, out for a lark. It moved so lightly. I have never seen anything so easy and sure. I remember how little it changed for me upon seeing more. The mechanics of the situation made plain. The whole thing was no less strange or wonderful, for the dark rider I could never quite make out, propelling it all along. One of the joys of teaching nonfiction is the fact that people who sign up for it so rarely have imagined that it could be anything good. They tell me when I asked what they thought they were getting. They say, I don't know, like textbooks, like writing about snakes. And of course, it is writing about snakes. It's so much, right? It's a big, inclusive, broad, weird tent reaching its fingers out in every direction to see what else is part of the family. Now, you might not use being cold, but checking in with you. What do you need tonight? Do you need a funny-looking dog right now? Do you need a weird sound in the ceiling? Do you need a sorcerer and some trolls?
Sea monsters.
Whoa, you need sea monsters! Anything else you need out there?
Funny dog.
I need a funny dog. Deal. Let's see, all right, we're going to sea monsters first. I really feel like, if you will open your hymnal. All right, I'm going to give you two things, one before the sea monsters. This is a book that's built in 7 pillars to hold up a tunnel. Right, each issue will stand alone and make something bigger. And then in between there are these little weird negative space minor key essays. So a short bit geographically in the same part of the world as the sea monsters. Entirely because I am in a pulpit, so I'm going to read you about a shower. The Museum of Obligation. Samuel Johnson was born in 1884. They say the man never had money in his hands until he retired and drew a pension. And what he did with it, immediately, at age 72, was buy paint and brushes and bags of concrete because what he wanted was to make art. He painted landscapes, he sculpted figures, he painted an altarpiece and gave it to his local church. Imagine all those years, nearly a lifetime, that he sat in that church with his private vision of what it all meant. Surely that vision evolved. Surely it was fearsome and awesome and terrible each in turn. And then, one day, he made that vision physical, material, something separate from himself, and arrived there where he dreamed it as if returning it home. Only the church didn't want it. The church would not accept it. So Samuel Johnson made his own church and erected the altarpiece there. I love this as a story of undaunted independence, of artistic freedom, of doubling down, of sticking it to the man. But there's also a way of telling it that is all about obligation, a telling that is almost unique. Samuel Johnson had made something holy. And when a holy place would not take it, he was obliged to find it some other sanctuary. The nature of the object demanded this. There could be no other way. I say church, but it is technically a chapel. It's on his farm at the end of the peninsula. The chapel is made of concrete, its architecture inspired by Russian postcards of great churches crowned with onion domes. If you come this far down the gravel road, if you're careful, you can open the chapel's red door and let yourself in. Indeed, Samuel Johnson made not one, but 2 structures, one early and one late, the pair accompanied by a small menagerie of his painted concrete sculptures. The sculptures to be seen outside include, at more or less life size, a swan with its signets, a seal, a human figure feeding a seal, a human figure with his hand held up as if to wave or shield his eyes, something like a massive blue seahorse, and a semicircle of 6 lions radiating out like a setting sun and backed up to a white chalice of a fountain as if holding it up with their palms. No two tales the same. After the artist made his chapel, he made a museum. He made a museum to hold the things that wouldn't hold up to the weather. He made a museum to hold the things that it takes a special effort to see. The museum doesn't have hours. There's no one there on staff. The day I went, we could not get in. This is the second structure. Perhaps it is a twin. Standing there, in the shadow of the museum, between the valley and the cliff-edged coast, my companion told me about coming out here as a boy, coming out with the other kids, the way the old man would show them how to add water to the fountain, like this. All those children on their tiptoes between the lines. You can imagine that a lot of Iceland is remote. This is a place that others point out that they have standards. It takes 50 people to be a town, and there are places that are smaller than that. We're going to be staying on this same peninsula in the Vestfjords as I take you to a sea monster center. The shoreline, deep within its sea monsterly heart, wants only this: to nudge you into the sea. We don't know why. We don't know what happens next. Perhaps it only wants for you to register the cold, the shock of cold and wet shoes. Perhaps it wants you just to feel the waves against your shins. Perhaps it has come to guide you home, to a place you never knew you belonged, beneath the depths. Perhaps you have gills that awaken with water. Perhaps this is what's best. The shoreline is slow enough you can outrun. And anyway, it is small enough, about the size of a sheep, that you can vault over if you have to. We know it favors pregnant women as the object of its nudging. We guess this is because pregnant women move slowly, though surely not as slowly as the shoreline. And surely not because some pregnant women have special reason to throw themselves into the sea. The shoreline, as perhaps its name suggests, is discussed only as is known on shore. One would imagine it is like a seal or a walrus, awkward and lumbering on land, but in its element something else. A mass of muscle and fight. But there are no stories of it in the sea. No stories of what happens should it get its push. It sounds so singularly ineffective. The shoreline's mode of attack, so charmingly benign. How utterly unthreatening the shoreline is, how minor the malice of this creature, but at its most alarming, at peak fierceness, attempts only to nudge you into the sea. You want to pat it on its head. Other monsters are all startle and threat and terror. They invoke the unknown, the sharp and unexpected, the way everything can be gone or lost or broken, unrecognizable in a moment. This monster, on the other hand, is almost cozy, persuasive, a monster that sidles up, tucks in, sort of a G-rated, and so gentle as to seem almost kind. It sounds like a thing you could tell a child about without undue distress when her father doesn't come home. But the thing that most deserves your attention may not be the massive beast flagged by fiery red mane, rocking your boat, spinning poison, scalding in steam. It may not seem like an immediate threat. Who even registers this tenacity? The doggedness by which it aims, by degrees, to sway your course. Its persistence is so easy to discount. It's pressed against you. Surely, a thing you can deal with later. There are really an astonishing number of museums in Iceland. For a country of 360,000 people, they're coming up on close to one museum per 1,000 people. Right, do some math. Think about where you're from, and think about how many museums you should have if that's the case. What is especially lovely about this particular museum is that it is a museum of oral history. It is a museum of the stories we tell. It is made by a reporter in his off hours, sitting at the radio station and just calling the retirement homes, working his way around the perimeter of the map, because, as they say in Iceland, everyone's seen a ghost. But talk about a monster, you might be crazy. So you need to find people that have hit the point of not caring. The people who maybe aren't listened to very often, and certainly not enough. And ask them what they know. And if we deserve a museum to anything, I think that's probably it. Do you need a funny looking dog in your life? I thought you right. Now, the first book ends up being about love things and about love animals, love natural history, because it's one of the great topics of museums. This book ends up being about love things and always an animal, because it's built thinking about a medieval beast, books of beasts, which we have as used 26 entries or maybe 300. The view and the scholarship of these beautiful marvels of text and image. There are so many social media people that just post great illuminations or illuminated manuscripts. You should follow them all. They are hilarious. And the thing about them is that if you try to trace what the lineage, the family tree is of these books that are part entomology, part travel writing, part moral philosophy, part natural history, you get one family tree if you try to trace the text, and another family tree entirely if you try to trace the images. We do not understand how they moved, but we do know that maybe sometimes they were copied, one scribe looking at a finished book, working on a blank. But often, because there are errors in them, there are titles of the ear, right? Mistakes you made because you're listening, not because you're reading. It helps us know that one of the ways we first started copying out books is not unlike this. That there would be somebody in the middle of a room in a holy space reading to people who do their best to take it down. That said, let me take you to California. Show of hands, does anyone in here have a funny looking dog? Is funny looking the word you use?
Yes. I say ugly.
I feel like when I was growing up, no cats were overweight, they were just fluffy. In fact, does anyone have a funny looking dog that they call a funny looking dog? Yeah. I'm very excited that I'm about to be preaching to the choir. If you will, you're supposed to be a child. And incidentally, I spoke with more than 100 illustrations and quite a few bookmarks. So I like to feel like you're here for story hour when I tell you that there's a picture at the beginning. We'll get it up like that. Speaking of fashions, Chloe was a dog built like a coffee table. She was long and broad with diminutive little legs. Imagine a magnificent dog. The head and body is threaded by one artist, the limbs by another. Imagine a clawfoot tub. Imagine a dog is on cinder blocks. Her proper legs stolen. Louise first saw her on the other side of a little rise of grass in bought the apartment together in Venice Beach, they were close enough to my brother that he'd sometimes come over and walk the dog. It was a perfect place to walk a dog. A few blocks and you were on the beach. The beach with that long sidewalk path past the sunbathers and the bodybuilders and the volleyball players, all the way to the Santa Monica Pier if you were in a mood to stretch your legs. It was perfect. Except for the fact there were so many people around. Which wasn't exactly the issue, but somehow being surrounded by strangers seemed to give people permission to voice what they were thinking out loud, as if anonymously, thoughts totally uncensored. And they felt the need to say, with shocking regularity, "That's a funny-looking dog." It was a strange kind of witnessing. These grown people moved to exclamation. It was almost like a reflex, an involuntary response, a gesundheit for funny-looking dogs. They made no eye contact, no effort to engage, yet these strangers, somehow caught in both startled and trance, were compelled to blurt out this eureka of the collective unconscious. Say it with me now. "That's a funny-looking dog." We were discussing Chloe at dinner one night. Louise and my siblings and I, speculating on Chloe's origins, essentially in agreement that her ancestry was surely some variation of Basset Hound and Shar-Pei. We speculated further that she might be the peak specimen of her ilk, the Bache. And with the wine list handy, christened her in absentia with a fancy breeder's name to make it official. Cypress Merlot still had the same short, stiff, honey-colored coat as when she was Chloe. She still had a hard-ribbed tail that curled in a perfect half-circle of contentment. She still had a floppy tongue and a thick skull, but now when a stranger in the grip of stream of consciousness announced, "You've got a funny-looking dog," my brother would graciously volunteer, "She's a Bache." It changed everything to have a name. The posture of the stranger would improve, the tone of their voice would lift and soften. They might bring one hand to their chest in a modest gesture of surprise. "Oh," the stranger would say, "I've never seen a Bache." My mother would then magnanimously offer the stranger an excuse, a fig leaf to cover their ignorance. They're better known on the continent. It was very easy to talk about the Bache. I went for walks with my brother and the dog whenever I could. "That's a funny," a stranger would start to say, and we would interrupt before they could finish the thought of our new, incredible line of offense. "She's a Bache!" And suddenly everyone wanted to know about Baches. "They are from France," we would say, with an unpracticed nonchalance. "You know the dog in Peter Pan?" we would ask. "Well, in the movie they named her Saint Bernard, but she's based on a Bache." "The Bache is really a product of the Industrial Revolution," we would expound. The words already in our mouths, the lecture arising impromptu, unbidden, fully formed, as if it had always been there. With an increase in wealth and an emerging middle class, households want to hire servants, emulate the social status of the well-to-do. But when they cannot afford nannies for their children, they might still afford a Bache. They are bred to be the constant companion of children. You see her long, low back. You see she is the perfect assist for a toddler learning to walk. The strangers loved us. They loved our Bache. They asked if they could pet her. They scratched her ears and tucked her head in their hands and told her how beautiful she was. We would have gone on that way. Forever, perhaps. All windfall and astonishment, surely we would have. Except for the woman who asked, "What kind of dog is that?" "A Bache!" we said. It was almost a thing we sang by then, a gift we gave, a celebration of all that was right and good and possible in the world. Can you say it with me? "A Bache!" we said. And the woman produced a voice out of thin air. "Oh, good," she said. "My son's very interested in dogs. He wants to be a veterinarian. He's never seen a Bache." We had not known our limits. Had no compunction about our ruse until we realized that we could not lie to a child. We did not then stop to review, did not in that moment consider how invariably the people who pointed, who stared, who offered unvarnished observations so frank as to be rude, were never children. We had not until then considered ourselves as peddling untruths. Every bit of our embroidery felt more honest, more right, than the steady stream of small slights against our dog. We quickened our pace and mumbled our breaths and did not look behind us as we rushed by. We stopped telling anyone anything about the dog. But my sister and Louise still had the apartment in Venice. They still had to walk the dog. And sometimes, if they walked towards the ocean, a stranger would stop them. "Is that a Bache?" the stranger would ask. If the stranger had doubted before, here was independent confirmation. Surely it was a trend. Surely the Bache was the next golden retriever, and soon we would all have them and everyone would know. My sister Louise had no response. The stranger would double down. "There's a red-headed guy around here," the stranger would say. "Has one just like it." The stranger would say as if providing evidence, as if proving initiation, as if the two people walking their dog might be the ones unconvinced, as if they might be shown exactly what they had in that glorious moment, right there at the end of their leash.
Thank you so much, Kendra. That was really awesome. If you have questions, I will come to you. Just raise your hand.
And while I was walking, the final essay in this book is the reason why my brilliant book designer, Best Idol, has added these historic renderings of the giraffe that walks from Marseille to Paris, right? The first giraffe we've seen in Europe since the Medici's had one that wanders around Florence, accepting apples from the hands of noblemen in second-story windows. It's a long story, but it has to do with a conversation I had once with a 6-year-old where I wanted her to know about the Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe. I said, So the normal giraffe, a typical, your average giraffe looks like this. Can I get you all to make some giraffes? Some standard giraffes, that's what we're starting. Basic giraffe. The Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe, who didn't even need a name because she was the Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe. There were others at the Santa Barbara Zoo, but we all knew who we meant when we said Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe. I have checked. There's a whole generation of us from the Tri-County area that still know the Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe. The Santa Barbara Zoo giraffe did this. Right, these two really noticeable bends. And then, because I was talking to my 6-year-old friend, suddenly there's a giraffe in my life. So, if you're feeling like you heard me, and I kind of think you are, if you put a giraffe, Dr. Peter will get to you extra fast.
So you write a lot about different topics, a variety of interesting things that spark your own curiosity. Obviously, the book is called Essays in Curiosity. Why do these things spark your interest? Is there like a certain set of, not necessarily expectations, but like things that these things meet in your mind that's like, this is something I want to write about?
It's like a feeling, right? That it's a resonance, right? Something sets you humming. And that means something. And I'm trying to collect as much of that as possible. I want other people to know about it too. I think that if I was found in religion, I imagine that what we'd be trying to get to is the realization that everything is fascinating. I definitely know that everything matters. Right? I mean, like meaningful eye contact to as many of you as humanly possible in this room. You matter. Right? Like, deeply and emphatically. You matter. And I mean, nothing's taken away from that. But I want to consult you that everything matters. And figuring out how we make, describe, and find meaning, oh boy, that's the thing that we're doing. Just paying attention as best we possibly can, I think.
So, just from talking to you, I can tell you're a very inquisitive person, which is obviously very good for what you do. So I was curious, what is the weirdest or strangest question you had to ask and you think of it?
That I had to ask.
Or you just wanted to ask?
Ooh, no, this is great. This is great. I was going to need to buy myself some time. Can I tell you a story about somebody else asking you a great question? This is actually sort of visually appropriate. When I was in high school in AP psychology, I don't know why we took a field trip to the local mortuary, but we did. And I had a friend in class who I think was trying to be a good citizen. We got to the end of the presentation. We were sitting in pews much like you are now, and the mortician asked if we had any questions, and we kind of didn't. And so my friend, I think, trying to be a good citizen, tried to ask any question, and what she asked was, does anyone ever get here and they're not dead? That's what the mortician said. The mortician laughed, right? And laughed. One of those like full body catharsis, laughed, and then we realized it was a funny question. So we laughed, the whole room was just moving, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed, until he said, well, just the one time. And the look of vindication, right? My poor friend, who had been trained better and better, who I think might have died there in front of the mortician because of the question she asked. Everything in an instant redeemed. Aha, right? We were all going to get something amazing because she asked a question that looked like was a foolish thing to pose. That's one of the great questions I've ever witnessed. I don't think about the things I've gotten to ask. There's some doozies, right? There's an essay in here called Ted Cruz is a Sentient Bag of Wasps. And I'm not a fiction writer. I had to fact check this. So I cold called a bunch of loss researchers and biologists, and they took me so seriously, right? They had things to say. They would call me back and say, well, here's another thing about actually having wasps in the bag most people don't know. It was kind of the best. So the threshold, if you can come up to the threshold of, is this a ridiculous question? There's a very good chance something's about to happen. I think most people aren't listened to often enough. And it's amazing how little it can take to get someone talking, because we need to share, we need to connect, we need for the things that matter to us to be with someone else too. I work both as a professor and in museums. I deal with a certain amount of prompts, which personally, as a student, I wasn't a huge fan of. But what amazes me watching how they work is you just need to give someone enough permission, enough excuse, enough cover to start talking, and the thing that we'll get to is almost always something that's really important, something that needs to be said. We just need to be able to start.
Hi. So I know it's rare, a lot of us all have a ton of works in progress, and we're like, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but I know we all have one that we're really looking forward to completing. I want to know, what is your work in progress that you're looking most forward to completing?
My mother feels strongly that Chicken Librarian, the series of children's stories that arose from telling my niece stories after she realized that books had dedications and her aunt is a writer, and she called it asking if I dedicated a book to me. And I asked her a question I think maybe we should all reflect on, which is, what is the book you want dedicated to you? So she wanted about the unicorns in the library and we're off to races. The manuscript for this was done, and I started working on a book I've called The Poison Cabinet, about all the fearsome and dangerous things that we really purposely made up real effort to hold on to. And what a beautiful thing it is that more than we are afraid of science, more than we are afraid of literature, more than we are afraid of the body, of sexuality, of politics, we're afraid of forgetting. We're afraid of censorship. We're afraid of losing access to the gains we've made in figuring out what a media is or how it works. So that got put on hold once this got picked up. And then I had all the appointments set up. I was going to the National Library of Medicine to look at the fourth known copy of a book of arsenical wallpapers made by the Michigan Department of Health in 1874 because it would be poisonous. And sent exclusively to the 100 leading libraries of the state. Right? I think it was made to be poisonous, sent only to places that collect. And that was in March of 2020. And so this book came on my side. I worked on 2 projects for a while. Do you know this fact about racehorses, that you have a skittish, nervous racehorse? One of the things you can afford is to get a goat to be exciting. This is the goat that was keeping that racehorse that way. I know that it is out in the world enough that belongs to you. Going back to Hell in the French library, the Poison Cabinet in the German library, the Conscience Pile in front of Petrified Forest National Park, the Forgery Closet in the Herbert collection, and a bunch of other places.
I think we have time for one more question, and I think it was chosen by Julie.
All right. Well, Dr. Peters is getting there. Will you humor me when I take a picture of a chapel full of giraffes? You rock.
What are your thoughts on Beyonce?
How much time do you have?
Infinite.
So I've spent some time working in a variety of capacities in museums. I used to be the curator that clicked to count how many came into the College Art Museum. I told people not to touch things. No one has ever thanked anyone for telling them not to touch things. I formatted things. I went on to research and write about the collection. I got to wear white gloves and take things out of the vault. I held print viewings. Then I costumed a giant ground sloth for a natural history museum. And I ended up at the Dallas Museum of Art because I thought, museums are storytelling institutions. It's weird they don't have writers in them. And I said, cool, also could you do some things for us? And what they did, they would give me like a mail tub of visitor response text that had been generated. There's a John Baker's painting called Starry Crown. It's about this big. It has 3 women from the artist's family, his mother, his grandmother, his auntie. There's a red thread that links their mouths, patterns of African and American origin sort of come in and out of the background. And the museum had asked, what is important wisdom from a woman in your life? And 7,192 people have responded. And we're still responding. It's an ongoing project with the mail tub. And I needed to bring order to it. I needed to figure out what we had. And I ended up with a 71-point taxonomy about content and form. So in forms, there are questions and directives. There's a lot of do, a lot of don't. There's a lot of always, there's a lot of never. There's a whole category just where this too shall pass, the single most common piece of advice people will come to. Then there was content. There was wisdom about animals. There was wisdom about beauty. There was wisdom about might. And there's an entire category of things I call true because it rhymes, and Beyonce was a category unto herself. I'll tell you about the awards judgment Beaver at the same museum if you catch me afterwards. Thank you so much for coming out here, for enlivening this space. It's really a fascinating thing to be up here, to meet you. I want to thank the many people I've gotten to see throughout today. Your questions, your energy, your investment is so beautiful and compelling and going to serve you. Thank you for coming. Go tell someone something interesting before you go to bed.